Jonah Crowley is here.
And Rachael Harris, ladies and gentlemen. And Matt O'Leary is here.
There's also our sound designers here. So, see,
Oh,
Vicky
yeah,
Lamont. She's back there.
Vicky Lamont is here.
Okay. Thanks for those of you who are staying. What do we do? Just
So,
Q&A.
We
so
do
we'll have
questions. Anybody have
Q&A.
any
Just
questions
questions.
for any of these guys?
Anybody have any
Yes.
questions?
Just want to say your movie did not blow. I really enjoyed it.
That's good.
And I'm just wondering, it's not the idea of the man secretly going to the clinic. Where did that idea come from?
That's how I was conceived.
Just kidding.
That came from a lot of places, actually. It's not just a joke. This is a funny story, actually. When I was in college, I had a real existential crisis. Regular stupid things like searching for meaning and all that. And at one point, I took this biology class, and you learn about evolution, and you learn that it's not. You traditionally think of it as two rams like butting heads on a, whatever, cliff face or something like that. But it's actually who can procreate the most, who can pass on their DNA is the real kind of survival of the fittest. So, to me, that was as close to meaning, to a solid meaning of life for me. It was like that you can define. So I started donating in the sperm clinic in the Empire State Building, which is it's an experience. So I know a lot about donating in a sperm clinic. But it was kind of one of those existential crises, and it kind of made its way into the film. All that kind of, man, what an awkward story. Everybody's totally creeped out. I told that at South by and killed.
You wanted to pass on your legacy.
I know, I keep thinking I'll be in New York one day, and I'll just be walking down the street, and this kid will pass by with his mom, and we'll both pass each other, and then we'll stop. Both just turn around, and then keep walking. We'll remember it for
That's
the
a
rest of
beautiful
our
story,
life.
thank you. It's very beautiful.
I told it for you.
Thank you. This is
All right.
just for us. Oh, gross. Okay.
Any more questions?
Can I ask you if Linda is based on anybody, and if there was anybody that you sort of drew inspiration from for the character?
Mm-hmm.
It's based on my mom. I mean, it's all, writing it was based on my mom. So it's all my mom's clothes. That puffy coat is, my mom wore it for 20 years, and she has a Death by Chocolate shirt as hers. And I wrote it when my mom, it was at a very weird time in my life when my stepfather, who had been with my mom for a while, was dying. And I found out he had cancer, and I guess when you're the son of a kind of, when you've been raised by a single mother, you're more protective than usual over her. And my mom in particular, she'd never been alone, and I think I'd always wanted to write a story about her, because I'm a big fan of, Knights of Cabiria and Secret of Nem, and these movies with this woman who's just, Julieta Messina, and or Lestrada, things like that. That character, and I knew I had that character in my mother, but I never had an emotional window into the character. And I think when that happened, when I found out she was going to be alone, I couldn't go to sleep at night. I was so scared, and I thought, I just had this picture in my head of her going to bed at night alone, and anybody who's alone, that's the worst time, then you can't ignore it. And so I couldn't sleep at night, and I think that became my window into the character, and I started writing the story as kind of therapy. And I think, to me, the emotional, the center of the story is that to me, it's her fear of being alone. I think they're all dependent in a certain way on certain things. Raymond on drugs and shutting the world out. Linda on Abe, and Abe on Linda. So they're all very dependent. And anyways, it's about my mom.
And I know what that felt like for me the first time I went back to my house, and all of his clothes were gone, and it just was, it was just that, and I think everyone can relate to that really horrible feeling
Yeah.
of being alone. So that's what I based that on. And then also I was, so that's really it. That's like the short answer. And then I was raised with religious, not as religious as Robbie's family or his experience, but I too believed in, was raised with people that had conviction, but that weren't making fun of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's equally disrespectful to be sacrosanct about any group of people as it is to just totally take the piss out of them and not understand them. And so when people ask about making fun of that community, of course I'm making fun of it. Like, I grew up in it and there's ample shit to make fun of. And if I didn't make fun of them, it probably means I don't like them that much, And so, I don't know, that's a tough thing when I read it. When people say to me, some people are offended and all that, but what's ironic is mostly who's offended are like bloggers from Chicago or like New York or something like that. Like my mom and her church, they're
They loved
think
it. They thought it would be
and they were all afraid I
respectful.
was just gonna make fun of them.
Yes.
So.
Yes, they were.
Questions? Yes.
And question, I mean, it's kind of along those same lines. I felt like the movie, I really loved that it was kind of a comedy, but that he used comedy to like make a sort of a more sentimental statement about like these people's loneliness and their meaning. And I'm wondering like if you kind of had to like tweak to get to that, to like not go too much into satire and comedy, or not go too much into just having it be like about sadness and loneliness, or if that was like more of a natural
Selection.
I think that in the editing process, it was mostly on the periphery of the main story. Like in the editing process, it was things like bringing down the preacher a little. It was a little. We had a little too much of him, like being a preacher who's obsessed with things like that were more satirical and more broad. But I think any great comedy, the director probably looks at it as a drama. I mean, on some level, at the core, So, The Apartment is a really dramatic movie, but it's the best comedy ever made. One of them. Something About Mary has a really great dramatic core. Dumb and Dumber is just a fucking great comedy. But so is Anchorman. But like 40-Year-Old Virgin. These are all recent.
These movies are all, they're.
But
The point is the punchline rather than the story.
40-Year-Old Virgin, I wouldn't say that necessarily. I mean, I think the 40-Year-Old Virgin is so good because Steve Carell is such a real character.
Thank you for coming. People that are leaving, I'm sorry.
You.
Thank you for listening.
Shame on you. No, but
Thanks for coming.
yeah, there are different kind of comedies.
Have a good night.
And this one definitely, I think in the writing it was more satirical than it was in my head. Like when people read the script, I think they thought it was a straight satire, but I always thought of it as I was like, oh my God, this isn't going to be funny enough. This is such a dramatic thing. I think too it's the acting, because the reason I think Rachel is, I really do think she's brilliant. And Matt O'Leary too. But I think Rachel, a lot of great actresses wanted this part. Really fine dramatic actresses. And Rachel, has only played comedic roles pretty much on screen. And she's part of the Groundlings and all that. But I think that her improv training and her training as a comedian, kind of an actress comedian, I think because of that, she had a deeper understanding of comedy. Because I think the reason she's funny on screen is because she's not trying to be funny. She's taking every moment seriously, and I think Rachel knows, and I don't know if a lot of dramatic actresses know this, I think Rachel knows there's really no difference between drama and comedy. It's just being in the moment. Some things are going to be funny and some things aren't, and you kind of have to just be gifted with a funny way of acting. You know, like Rachel in the movie has a funny way of responding to things honestly. And when people say, how does she go from comedy to drama and all that, she's not really thinking of it like that, you know, and I don't think Matt is either, although he was younger and less experienced with comedy, so there were times when he was trying to be funny, but most of those things are not in the movie. I mean, there was a time when they're first sitting, when you guys are first sitting down, you want to tell that? What happened when we tried to improv?
Well, we were improvising, and like he said, just start improvising and asking him questions, like
When they first meet.
when we first meet, and it's in the house, and it's so fish out of water, and so we started improvising a lot of things, and Matt started saying, it just started getting more and more
You asked him
absurd.
what he did for fun. and
Right, like I asked what he did for fun, and he said, what did he say? He
It's
said,
crazy, like chucking
Chucking
gerbils
gerbils
into something.
into a, and
Fireworks down the, it was weird.
right, and so you can share the rest of it.
And so,
You should, because it makes me sick.
wait, are you calling me a dick?
No, it'll make me look like a dick.
And Rachel played the game, and I was like, oh my God, I got this great improv actress here.
I should say this was also like 4:30 in the morning on Easter.
They don't give a shit about it.
And no, they do. This is and the crew was literally like looking at us like,
Oh yeah, some of the
Really?
crew is here, so they know.
and they were like, "Are you kidding me? You're
Are
gonna
you
make them
fucking
do this
kidding me?
again?"
So I did like 2 hours of this improv, right? I was like, this is gonna be great. Rachel, just after the first hour, was like, this, I feel like I'm doing a growling skit. Because it was all jokes. And she didn't like it. It was clear she didn't like it. So of course I get in the editing room. And all of it fucking sucks. Like, it's just terrible. But
So
the one thing,
so who
but-
was right?
you were, not exactly though, because the one
Okay,
thing,
you're right.
what is the one thing we use from it?
You're right.
What's
Do you have any hobbies or pets?
aspirations or
or
pets?
pets.
And
Right.
that I
We
think
did use that.
is the funniest. Like that's, well, I think it's funny because Linda would put those three things on the same pedestal. Hobbies, aspirations, and
And
pets.
pets.
That's what my mom would put it. But that was funny because it was in character, not because it was a joke, you know, not because she was like making fun of the character. Because that's inevitably what sometimes improv devolves into, is making fun of the character. And for this movie at least, that wasn't what we wanted to do. And Rachel taught me that.
Yeah, you're balanced.
Okay, we only have time for 2 more questions, so make them the best questions ever. Okay.
Now, where you found such a great actress. Organic.
Can you tell this story how at first you didn't want to see me? You
I
really
did.
didn't.
My casting directors, we had another actress attached for a long time, but when she heard how low the budget was going to be and that we're shooting in Austin, she's great, but she couldn't do it. And so then began the search for actresses, and I met with a bunch of actresses, and my casting directors, to make a long story short, they said, meet with Rachel. And I was like, you know, the bitch from The Hangover. I'd seen her in a bunch of stuff, and you are good at that part. But I was like, that's not Linda. But as soon as I got to meet her, there was just something about her. I think the best casting is hyperbole. I know the best casting is hyperbole. And I saw the essence of Linda kind of in her, especially when she started talking about, you know, your divorce and things like that. Then she auditioned, and it was great. And we cast her, and then she was like, I have to drop out because I have a pilot I have to do.
It was a family. My brother.
And your brother was okay.
My brother was
And
sick.
so we had to go with our second choice, and I was really bummed, and we kept going through contract stuff with her, and it was an awful process. She was really burned that we went with Rach. I had to meet with her to have a special meeting with this other actress, and she was like, so, you cast Rachael Harris in this part. It's interesting. I thought you wanted this, I thought you took this movie seriously. But I stood my ground. I stood my ground, and I was like, actually, Rachel's a really good actress. Anyways, we went down the road with this woman, and I just didn't want to do it. And everybody was like, you can't go back to Rachel, you can't go back to Rachel, never, you can't do that, it's not Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. And finally, one night, a week before production, I couldn't sleep, and I had like, I just knew in my gut it was Rachel, and so I was like, screw it, I'm gonna Facebook message her. And me and my producers were like, we can't know about this is horrible, okay, but, and we spent like 3 hours crafting the perfect message, and then within like 45 minutes, she emailed us back and was like, yep, I'll do it. And she came down, and I think that
It was because we had a conflict of dates. So I said, if you can push it a week, which is, huge. I thought for sure they're going to tell me, no, we're not going to push this movie a week for you. And then they called back and said. But
to your point, though, don't worry.
Know your place, woman.
I still didn't know whether Rachel could do the really dramatic stuff, and I didn't know about the chemistry between Matt and her. We didn't have rehearsals, because it was an 18-day shoot. It was really rushed. And the first scene we shot between her and Matt was that soup scene where she's feeding him. So from the get-go, I was like, okay, the chemistry's pat. They got chemistry. They have chemistry. And the next day were all these hospital scenes. And the first one was when she's watching the porno on TV with the nurse showing her the porn, like torturing her by showing her. My DP was always like, why is this nurse doing this to us? But I think if Linda was really in that situation, she'd want to know what he was watching. Whatever. So I told them she's got to react realistically to this, or the whole thing's going to be too goofy. And it'll be funnier and better if she reacts like, her heart is being torn out of her chest, And I was like, it's going to mean she's going to have to cry, get emotional. We're going to be here all day, guys. I was like, I'm going to have to get this out of her. Rachel's never done this. And the first take is what's on there. Wow. So from the get-go, Jonah cried.
Just because she's mean.
Yeah, that's because she was hitting people.
Yes.
She was hitting people.
What Robbie doesn't know is that I made Jonah smack me before that scene. And no.
Well, I have to be mean, we have to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
sorry.
Sorry about that.
What about Matt?
Yeah, Matt. She wants to know how you found Matt.
Matt is an actor. He was in Frailty and Spy Kids 3, and he's crazy. Matt, he is an awesome, amazing actor, but like I said, the best casting is hyperbole. When I first picked him up, I was a little, I cast him, I thought he could do it, but I thought I was going to have to work on him too.
But you made him come back because you said he was too angry. Like,
Yeah,
you worked with him a lot.
but we worked with him, but I still had my doubts when I picked him up for this shoot. And when I picked him up, the kid gets in the car, and we have a 45-minute drive, and he tells me 6 inane stories in a row about his family, how his dad died and buried some treasure, and like literally how he's going to start a Christmas tree farm, he's building an electromagnetic converter out of like, and the whole time I'm just listening to this kid won't shut the fuck up, and I'm like, I chose the best guy for this show. All right, let's.
Well done. Yay. Those are good questions.